What happens when a millionaire decides to test the true nature of the people around him? When wealth is stripped away and only character remains, who will prove themselves worthy? This is a story of deception, greed, and an unexpected lesson in humanity. The scorching afternoon sun beat down on the pavement as Nicholas Vaughn sat slumped against the steps of his own corporate building. His expensive suit was gone, replaced with torn jeans, a stained hoodie, and dirt-smeared sneakers. His usually well-groomed hair was unkempt, and a scruffy beard covered his jaw. To anyone passing by, he was just another homeless man, ignored, avoided, and dismissed. And that was exactly what he wanted. For months, Nicholas had heard whispers about how his employees treated people: the arrogance, the lack of empathy, the coldness toward those who had nothing to offer. His company, Vaughn Enterprises, was built on values his late father had instilled in him: kindness, integrity, fairness. But lately, he feared those values had been lost. So today, he would find out the truth for himself. The first test began the moment the lunch crowd spilled onto the sidewalk. Would anyone stop? Would anyone care? A group of employees exited the building, their laughter echoing across the steps. Among them was Elena, a sharp-eyed woman in a designer blazer, Ryan, a broad-shouldered man in an expensive watch, and Caleb, a junior executive who always seemed to follow the others' lead. Nicholas made his move. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, and let it slip onto the pavement beside him. Then he leaned back, closed his eyes, and waited. The moment Elena spotted the money, she stopped mid-step. Wait, did he just drop that? Ryan smirked. Doubt it's his. A guy like that probably doesn't even have $5 to lose. Caleb hesitated. Maybe we should ask. Ask what? Elena scoffed. If he stole it from someone else, please. Without another word, Ryan bent down, snatched up the money, and stuffed it into his pocket. The three of them laughed as they walked away. Nicholas opened his eyes, watching them go. His jaw clenched. The test had begun, and they had already failed. Nicholas exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay in character. His heart wasn't racing because of the money. $5 meant nothing to him. But what it represented? That was everything. As the lunch crowd thinned, he spotted another figure approaching, a young woman with a simple yet professional outfit, carrying a small stack of folders. Her name tag read Maya. Unlike the others, she wasn't walking in a hurry. She glanced at Nicholas, then at the spot where the money had been. She hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like she might walk away like the rest. But then, she did something that made Nicholas sit up just a little straighter. She turned back. "Excuse me, sir," she said, kneeling slightly. "I think you dropped some money." Nicholas blinked, playing his part. "Money?" He furrowed his brows. "I don't think so." Maya held out a crisp $10 bill. "I saw it on the ground near you. If it's not yours, maybe someone else lost it, but I just wanted to check." Nicholas frowned. He had only dropped a 5. This was more. Maya didn't just return the money, she added to it. Before he could respond, another voice cut through the moment. "Oh, come on! Really?" Nicholas turned. Elena, arms crossed, eyebrows raised, standing just a few feet away. Ryan and Caleb were behind her, exchanging amused glances. "You're giving him money? Just like that?" she scoffed. Maya shifted slightly but didn't back down. "It's just $10. "Exactly," Elena said, rolling her eyes. "And you're giving it to someone who's probably going to waste it." Nicholas studied Maya's face. Would she fold under the pressure? Instead, she squared her shoulders. Maybe, maybe not. But it's not my place to assume the worst in people. Silence. Ryan chuckled. "Your loss." Elena shot Nicholas one last look before shaking her head and walking off with the others. Maya turned back to Nicholas, still holding out the bill. "Take it," she insisted softly. "Just in case." Nicholas hesitated, then slowly reached for the money. And just like that, the second test was over. One had failed, one had passed, But the real test? It was only just beginning. The subway rumbled beneath the city streets as Nicholas sat at the far end of the car, his hood pulled low, blending into the shadows. His fingers traced the crumpled bill in his pocket, the same one Maya had given him. She had passed the test, but the others, they had failed without hesitation. Now, it was time for the third test. A few stops later, Nicholas arrived at the company's private event hall. Inside, a catered lunch had been set up for the top executives. Lavish trays of smoked salmon, gourmet pastas, and desserts lined the tables. The air smelled of fresh baked bread and expensive wine. Nicholas stepped inside unnoticed. No one paid attention to a scruffy man in worn-out clothes. He scanned the room, eyes settling on Ryan, Elena, and Caleb seated near the buffet, laughing as they filled their plates. Maya sat at a smaller table, sipping water, her plate untouched. A waiter, dressed in a sharp black uniform, made his way around the room, ensuring every guest was taken care of. Nicholas watched as the waiter paused near Maya, offering her a plate. She shook her head, smiling politely. "I'm fine, thank you." But then, Nicholas saw something that made his blood turn cold. At the far side of the room, an older janitor, Mr. Lewis, someone who had worked at the company for years, walked up to the buffet, eyeing the food longingly. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, his hands rough from years of labor. And just as he was about to reach for a plate, Elena stepped in. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on his shoulder and smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't kind at all. "Oh, Mr. Lewis, this food isn't for you." Nicholas tensed. Ryan leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Yeah, man, don't embarrass yourself. The staff eats in the break room, not here." Mr. Lewis's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a quiet humiliation settling over him. Caleb chuckled. "I mean, unless you want leftovers." Nicholas's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. Then, before he could react, someone else did. Maya. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "That's enough." The room fell silent. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Maya didn't back down. "He works just as hard as we do. Why shouldn't he eat here?" Ryan scoffed. "Because this isn't a soup kitchen." Maya's jaw tightened. Then, without another word, she picked up her own untouched plate, walked over to Mr. Lewis, and placed it in front of him. "Enjoy your meal, sir." Nicholas's chest tightened. She had passed again. And the others? They had just sealed their fate. A heavy silence filled the room. Maya stood tall, unwavering, while Mr. Lewis hesitated, staring at the plate in front of him. His calloused hands hovered over the food, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch it. Elena scoffed, crossing her arms. "Unbelievable. So now you're the savior of janitors? What's next? Handing out bonuses to street beggars?" Maya didn't even flinch. "Treating people with basic respect isn't charity, Elena." Nicholas leaned back, watching everything unfold. His disguise had served its purpose. He had seen enough. The final test was already in motion, but they didn't know it yet. The doors at the end of the hall swung open. The CEO of Vaughn Enterprises had arrived. Only, he had been here the whole time. Nicholas pulled off his hood, sat up straight, and let his presence sink in. Elena's smirk vanished. Ryan's confidence shattered. Caleb's face drained of color. Maya was the only one who didn't react, because Maya was the only one who didn't react, because she had nothing to hide. Nicholas stood up slowly, the weight of his true identity settling over the room like a thundercloud. He smoothed out his hoodie, straightened his posture, and met their stunned expressions with an unreadable gaze. "Sir?" Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. What are you?" Nicholas let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. Then, finally, he spoke. "I had my suspicions about the kind of people working for me. Today, I got my answers." He turned to Ryan first. "You saw money on the ground, and instead of asking whose it was, you took it." Ryan's lips parted as if he wanted to argue, but no words came out. Nicholas's gaze shifted to Elena. You humiliated a man who has worked for this company longer than you've been alive. You decided his worth based on his job title, not his character. Elena looked away, her jaw tightening. Then, his eyes locked onto Caleb. And you? You let it happen. Every single time. You stood by, laughing, agreeing, letting them do the dirty work while you played along. Caleb swallowed hard. Nicholas exhaled sharply, shaking his head. People like you are the reason companies lose their soul. Then, he turned to Maya. And you? His voice softened. You did what was right, even when no one else did. Maya shifted uncomfortably. I just treated people the way they deserve to be treated. Nicholas nodded. And that's why you're the only one in this room still employed. A sharp gasp echoed through the hall. Wait, what? Elena's voice shot up. You're firing us? Nicholas didn't blink. You fired yourselves the moment you showed me who you really are. Ryan slammed his hands on the table. This is insane. You can't do this. Nicholas tilted his head. You know what's insane? Thinking success gives you the right to treat people like they don't matter? Elena tried again. Sir, please, give us one more chance. Nicholas studied them for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Fine, you'll get one last chance. A flicker of hope lit up their eyes. But not here. His voice was firm. Not in my company. The room fell into stunned silence. Ryan, Elena, and Caleb were left speechless as Nicholas turned to Mr. Lewis and smiled. Enjoy your meal, sir? Then, he looked back at Maya. Welcome to Vaughn Enterprises. You start Monday. And just like that, the test was over. Some people lost everything. One person gained everything. But all of them? They finally saw who they really were.